Okay, awesome, very good. So I wanted to go over a couple of things here within this meeting. I wanted to go over the signature assignment in terms of walking you all through what it is, how to work on it, also giving you all some examples to give you like a sample topic, and kind of go through that topic while looking at the actual signature assignment description, as well as also taking a look at the rubric really quickly. And I also wanted to also maybe go over the discussion layout as well. I know we had the first discussion that was due, and I have been taking a look at it, and for the most part, you all have been doing pretty good on that. So we'll get to that here in a bit. So that'll be the second part that we'll take a look at here, and things like that. So okay, let's see. Olga says, so thank you for the sample. Oh, okay, yes, you're welcome. Yeah, we're going to be doing that. I'll do a sample both for the signature assignment as well as the discussion. So if like let's say you after like having seen the samples and the examples, if you want to go back and make some changes to it, you're more than welcome to do so. As I mentioned to you all in the previous meeting, and of course I'll also I guess I need to also mention to the class as well here that since we are operating on an 8-week schedule and we're kind of almost towards the middle of that, I can definitely allow for you all to turn in stuff late and get things in. Just as long as you get things in, by the end of the semester, we should be okay. All right. So this upcoming week for Thanksgiving, I'm going to be, grading, your submissions here, as well as, kind of making sure that everyone's doing okay in the class and things like that. So just please bear with me, everyone. Please be a little bit patient. Just keep in mind that professors also get tired too. We're hitting that semester wall where, and as I mentioned to you before, the fall semester is always really tough because we don't get any break until the end. So it's almost like watching like a 3-hour movie, and then of course not being able to have a bathroom break or anything like that. I'm sure you all have gone through that, right? Where those really long movies and you're like, you don't want to miss anything, but and things like that. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of like we're like, oh, we're just trying to get through the end of the movie here without any type of break. So so just bear with me on that. We'll definitely get to that, almost here. So with that being said, I just wanted to just assure you all that, if you need a little bit extra time to turn stuff in, that's okay. I'll still accept things. Don't worry. I'm even going to email my own professor from my own grad school because I've gotten a little bit behind in my own assignments. It happens. Okay. It happens. Don't worry. It doesn't mean we're bad people. It doesn't mean we're lazy or anything like that. It's just that life, life takes over. And also keep in mind, everyone, that we're not at the same vitality level that we were back in August when we started, right? I mean, that's something that people don't understand is that I'm nowhere near as rested and ready to go now as I was in August, right? We're kind of running a little bit empty here, right? So we have to just do the best we can. But just keep that in mind that we're all, kind of tired, and we'll definitely get there. But I just want for you all just to understand what's going on, and I know that things will be okay in that regard. But with that being said, let's go ahead and start with the. Let me share the screen so we can do the signature assignment here first off, really quickly. Okay, because I've got several tabs here open. Let me go ahead and, or you know what? Let me go ahead and open these really quickly. Yeah, let me do that. And then you know what? Let me go ahead and do that. Let me open these tabs really quickly so that way it's just a seamless transition here. Hold on, because this one's open. Because I'm opening the rubric as well as the actual description here, and then we can. Okay, hold on. Yeah, because I think that'd be better than just kind of skipping over the different tabs. So let me just kind of do that really quickly here. Okay. Okay, I'm just waiting for the document to load here really quickly. Okay, there it goes. Okay, all right. So then, okay, then let me go ahead and share the screen now. Okay, all right. So you should be able to see the signature assignment, congressional letter of concern, final project here. Now I'm not. I know the last meeting I had, it was just students from the federal government section. So if you're in Texas government, it's basically the same thing. The only major difference is that instead of writing to a member of Congress, you're going to be writing to a state or local elected official, such as the governor, lieutenant governor, maybe your county judge, your mayor, city council member, school board. That's for Texas government. But if it's federal, then it's going to be to the any of the members of Congress that represent Texas. Now, do keep in mind that this is not an actual letter that you're going to send. You can send it if you want to. That, of course, is your right as a private citizen, but you do not have to do that for the purposes of this class. It's just a simulation. It's a mock letter, right? It's, what would you do if you were actually doing this for real? If you were actually a concerned citizen and you were trying to exercise your First Amendment right to try to contact elected officials about a particular issue that you're concerned about, this is how you would do that, right? So that's what the purpose of this assignment is, for you all to academically see how you all would do this, right? So that's the whole purpose of what it is that we're doing here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and continue here, right? So the letter of concern signature assignment requires that you write a letter to any one of the two United States congressional senators representing Texas, or any U.S. congressional representative representing Texas. So again, this is what this is mean. I know it's kind of a little bit of like a tongue twister, repetitive nature here in terms of the way it's worded. I probably should redo that wording a little bit better. Basically, the first thing that you're going to do with this assignment is you have to select. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I forgot that I had. Speaking of Congress, I just got a text message from my own member of Congress. It's not her. It's from like a list or something like that. But she just sent me one of these. So what are the odds of that? That's pretty funny. Her name is Monica de la Cruz. She's the U.S. House Representative for District 15. I kid you not. She's just sent me a message. Like, again, it's not her personally. It's one of these mailing lists that they send out. But she's in the messages inviting me to to sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that's pretty good. I like that. Anyway, so with that being said, okay, so it's almost like she knew what I was talking about here. But with that being said, that's kind of interesting. So with that being said, so you're going to select any of these members of of Congress that represent Texas. So this would be either of your two U.S. senators, which currently, of course, our two current U.S. senators are Ted Cruz and John Cornyn. You're probably familiar with both of them for sure. Ted Cruz, he definitely gets is probably more well known than Senator John Cornyn, but nonetheless, these are the two senators from Texas. And then Texas does have the second largest House congressional delegation. There are 38 House members within Texas. So what I would recommend for you to do on this one is to try to find who your own member of Congress is in terms of your own actual representative, right? So there's different ways to do that. There's different websites that you can look that up. If you're not sure, you could always ask me and I can help you all with that. But I would definitely recommend that if you are going to pick a House member, to try to pick your own House member. Just like I mentioned here, I just got this text message from the mailing list from my own Congresswoman. I would recommend for you all to do the same when it comes to if you want to write to a House member, right? That's why normally in the years that I've done this assignment, most of the time I usually get the letters sent to the senators, because that's easier to try to find out. But sometimes I do get those House members, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to write to your own local House member. You could also maybe pick a certain House member depending on the issue you want to write about. So if, let's say, you wanted to pick border security, that would be more so for districts that are along the border. So that would be like your District 28, your District 15, and then of course your District 34, as well as District 23 over there, in between Del Rio and going towards El Paso. El Paso is its own district. So again, if you wanted to pick a topic related to that, then of course it would make more sense to write to the House member that is, that has that area of representation along the border. So that's one example. In fact, that's the example that we're going to use. We're going to talk about border security. That's the example that we're going to use when going through the letter, right? So the letter of concern will demonstrate your ability. So again, this is the first thing you have to do. If you notice down here that there's a rough draft that I have here, right? This is going to be due after Thanksgiving break, okay? The rough draft is basically where you are going to, oh, I'm sorry, I do need to change that. I'm sorry about that. I need to change that. That's fine. I'll go ahead and change that here because I have it for extra credit. But let me go ahead and change that. That was for another class. I'll change it. But please do turn that in. Okay, that is going to be a requirement. I will make that. That was a change from the previous semester. So let me go ahead and make that change. So I do apologize for that. But yeah, so do keep in mind that that it is going to be mandatory to turn in the rough draft. But again, it's not difficult. It's just like a half-page double space where you. The three things that you're going to do is you're going to list the member of Congress, either the senators or the House members. Sorry that I'm tripping over my words. It's been a really long day. I've been teaching all day, but the members of the House, either the Senate or the House. Then the second thing you're going to do is you're going to pick an issue that you want to write about, and then you're going to come up with an ethical strategy to that issue, right? So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be again, the letter of concern will demonstrate your ability to effectively communicate by developing and writing an effective summary that identifies, integrates, critically analyzes, and makes recommendations for the solution to the issue, right? So that's what you're going to do. You're going to come up with a solution to this issue. That's the third part that you're going to come up with, and that is based on considering the origins, facts, processes, input. Basically, the whole purpose of the signature assignment, it's what I like to call a capstone assignment. And I don't know if any of y'all have heard the phrase capstone. This is where it's like a final project where we're going to take everything that we have learned within this class, and we're going to see, how well you have learned all these different learning outcomes and learning objectives that we are supposed to be learning in this class, right? Such as public opinion, interest groups, political parties, and things like that. And the rubric is going to show that more in detail, because the purpose of this signature assignment is that the state of Texas does make it mandatory that when we're teaching this information, we're not just teaching it just to teach it, right? You also have to demonstrate that you are picking up on certain skills, such as personal responsibility, social responsibility, those SLOs, those student learning outcomes. You have to demonstrate that you're able to know what those are and actually implement them within your class. And so, yes, you're doing that throughout the entire class, but this signature assignment is a good way to measure it within one specific assignment, right? It's easier to measure it that way. So that's how we're able to do so. And so you're going to have to also research the issue and find a constitutional solution to that problem and develop that ethical strategy that can be used to help implement your policy solution. So this assignment is going to require some outside research. It's what I like to call a research essay. It's not really a research paper. I'm sure some of y'all may have done research papers in the past, but this is not necessarily a research paper. It's more so a research essay, because it's just going to be 1,000 words. That's at the minimum. That's usually probably about 2 pages, single space, because you are going to make it look like a letter. But that's basically what it's going to look like. Okay, so with that being said, what I would also recommend for y'all to do is I would recommend to have these two handy. And down here, this is a video lecture where I do discuss it in greater detail, which is what we're doing here today. But what I would recommend for y'all to do is have these two handy with you all, and so that way you can be following along as you're writing this out. So let me go ahead and let me see here. Let me go ahead and stop the share really quickly, because I can't. Okay, and then I'll share it here again really quickly, because I want to. Let me go to the other page here, so that way you all can see let's see. Okay, so y'all should be able to see. This is the document here, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through the documents, and I'm going to use an example I'm going to use an example so that you all can have a better idea on how to go about working on this assignment here, right? So again, so we already covered the assignment itself in terms of the description. Now we're going to go through the criteria here. Now, as I mentioned before, I would recommend for you all to have this handy, as well as the rubric. We're going to cover the rubric also after this. So I'd recommend that you have the actual assignment document and the rubric handy, so that as you're working on this assignment, you can check off that you all covered this aspect. Okay, so I covered number 1. I identified and analyzed either a civil liberty, civil rights, or foreign or domestic, social/economic policy issue, right? I did number 2. I demonstrated why this is a national issue, not a state issue, right? So I want you to have this handy with you all as you all are writing this. And I guarantee you that if you if you are able to check off all 8 of these, as well as what we have in the rubric, then I'll guarantee you that you'll get a good grade. Okay, if you're able to hit on all these points, you will get a good grade on this final project here. Okay, so let's kind of break this down into detail. Okay, so number 1 asks to identify and analyze either a civil liberty, civil rights, or foreign or domestic social economic policy issue or controversy. Now, the good thing about this is that almost anything that you can think of is going to fall within these categories, right? Everything is either a foreign or domestic policy, right? And almost everything is going to have some federal involvement. Even states issues definitely have some federal involvement. Okay, so this is going to be pretty easy in terms of picking your topic what I mean by easy is that it's easy to determine that it does count for federal government, right? So for government 2305, that's totally okay, right? If this was Texas government, again, you would be trying to pick a state issue. Now, this doesn't mean that those state issues can't have federal involvement, but for federal government, I want, and this also leads to number two, right? Demonstrate why this is a national issue. Not necessarily that it's not a state issue, but more so, and I should probably reword this a little bit, more so, why is it more a national issue as opposed to a state issue, right? So let's go ahead and kind of use some examples here. So number one, let's say I'm going to write about border security, and I'm going to give a little bit of a description of what border security is and why is it controversial. So maybe talk a little bit about the history of the border security. You could probably talk about the Reagan amnesty from the 1980s, the Immigration Reform and Control Act, 1984. So you could talk a little about that, how that granted amnesty to undocumented immigrants that were here already. So it was kind of like one of those one-time amnesty types of things. So you could talk about why this issue has become controversial. You can also talk about the current situation with the refugee situation where a lot of these immigrants are seeking asylum in the United States. So you could talk a little bit about what that process is and why that's happening with people coming over from Central and South America moving to the United States. You could talk a little bit about that. So that's where you're going to have to do a little bit of research, right? You're going to have to do a little bit of research because that's going to be beyond only what you can find in the book, right? You're going to have to do some research. I would recommend for y'all to look up, some news articles like, CNN would be a good, some of these other news sites, such as, I know a lot of them are behind paywalls now, unfortunately, so I know that can be a little bit difficult. You could also, of course, use the Blinn library to look up some articles here, although you don't necessarily have to be that precise. I'm not asking you all to cite like 10 journal articles. Leave that to me. That's what I'm going to be doing in my PhD that I'm working on. But just go ahead and focus more on like some news articles, like the CNN. A good news organization that I like to use for Texas government is the Texas Tribune. They've got a lot of great information, and the best thing is that they're free. They don't have a paywall, so you can definitely access that information, and that would be good if you're going to write about border security, especially how it relates to Texas. So the Texas Tribune would be a good that would be a good news site to look up as well. I would definitely recommend that. So again, so number one, of course, we're picking border security. Like I said, we're going to give a little bit of description of it, the history and term, and also why is it an issue today. Number two says demonstrate why this is a national issue. So if you're familiar with the Constitution, as you all have been reading through our class, you're probably familiar that there are that when we're looking at the Constitution, the first article in the Constitution deals with Congress, right? And you're probably also familiar with Article 1, Section 8 within our Constitution, right? This is basically Congress's job description. So one of the express powers that Congress has within Article 1, Section 8 is called the rule of naturalization. Okay, that is basically what we call immigration today. So because Congress has the right to pass laws dealing with naturalization, dealing with citizenship, and dealing with immigration, this is what allows for the national government to have the main responsibility, and in some cases, people would say the only responsibility when it comes to securing the border, right? And that's why if you're familiar with you might not necessarily be familiar with some of those federal departments where you all live, but if you go down towards the border, you will see Border Patrol, you will see Customs and Border Protection, right? You will see Immigration's Custom Enforcement, all of these different Department of Homeland Security agencies and departments and things like that, right? So those agencies are responsible for securing the border, securing ports. So Border Patrol secures along the actual border. CBP, they secure the ports of entry, such as the bridges and things like that. So and then of course ICE, they're responsible for investigating, trying to find businesses that maybe are hiring illegal immigrants and they're paying them under the table, and maybe these stash houses or things like that. So that's more on the criminal side. That's more of the violation of criminal law, where they're using immigrants for criminal purposes, right, and things like that. Also organized crime and things like that. So you have to so for number two, you would talk about how that Article 1, Section 8, because of that rule of naturalization, says that Congress has that authority. Now, That doesn't mean that the state of Texas has not gotten involved in the border security issue, right? You're probably familiar. The Governor Greg Abbott has been very vocal on this issue. He has authorized for DPS, Texas Department of Homeland, I'm sorry, Texas Department of Public Safety, to go down to the border and assist with the federal agents and assist with border security, right? And there's been some controversy about Texas's role, right? They've been in the news when it comes to like the buoy system there in Eagle Pass. There's also been there's also been some controversies with DPS troopers setting up barbed wire fencing, and then some border patrol agents have gone and cut the wire. It's a big time constitutional issue, right? When you've got the federal government versus the state government, right? And that's why it's in court right now to try to figure out how that's going to go. But it is very interesting to see those differing constitutional opinions, right, and those constitutional interpretations, because even though technically the border security is a federal issue, what happens if a state feels that they don't agree with the job that the national government is doing? What if a state like Texas feels that the national government isn't doing a good enough job? Does the state of Texas have the right to go and enforce their border, right? Because it's not just an international border. It's not just a border between the United States and Mexico, but it's also a border between Texas and, let's say, Tamaulipas, and Texas and Nuevo Leon and all that, right? So we see how Texas does, at least, in terms of Governor Greg Abbott, and he definitely has a valid, point and concern in terms of getting involved here. So it's not, the Constitution definitely does favor more the national viewpoint because it is in the Constitution. But again, but logically speaking, you could see how the states would definitely want to make, would definitely be concerned and would want to try to help with that situation. So just keep that in mind. But again, for border security, the Constitution is the reason why it's a national issue. And then talk a little about that. Okay, now number 3, explain how this issue is related to the origin and development of constitutional democracy in the United States. Make sure to provide background on the issue and how it relates to the constitutional foundations, establishment of the U.S. Bill of Rights. Now, do keep in mind that some of these are going to be a little bit redundant, like 2 and 3. You could probably kind of answer. You could probably take a little bit of 2 and 3 and kind of make them into one long, discussion point here, because as I mentioned, we kind of already answered this a little bit, right? That when it comes to the constitutional democracy in the United States, you could talk about how that we have the 3 branches of government. Why are those 3 branches important? Why is it important that when it comes to the enforcement of you could talk about, in terms of how we got this whole notion of border security, right? You could talk about those 3 branches, right? And then there's another question that also, number 5, also kind of goes into this as well, right? So number 3, you could talk a little bit about, you could start that. You could talk about how that a constitutional democracy necessitates the need for 3 branches of government that are separate from each other. And you could talk about how, when it comes to border security, that it starts with Congress, right? When it comes to the passing of immigration law, and then it falls on the executive branch to enforce that law, and that, of course, leads to the creation of those different Homeland Security departments, like we mentioned, like Border Patrol, Customs Border Protection, and Immigration's Customs Enforcement. And then, of course, you can give background to, and of course, you could give background on the issue and how it relates to the constitutional foundations, amendments to the U.S. Bill of Rights. You could also talk about, you could also talk a little bit about, some of this idea of, of the rights that, that some of these immigrants might have, or things like that. Are they, they're in violation of federal law, right? So you could maybe talk about that a bit, and what are the consequences, towards those. So there's a lot that you can do with some of these, right? Let's kind of skip over number 5, because again, this one definitely goes a little bit. This kind of carries over for number 3. So for number 5, you have to identify the branch of the government responsible for that policy issue, and if there's part of any other branch that could also be implicated in the matter, right? So for these, like I said, you don't necessarily have to make it to where you answer it like, okay, this is number 1, this is number 2, because you are going to style it like a letter, right? So it does have to look more like a letter. So as long as you're answering these questions, and I can read that you're answering these questions, then you should be okay. But like I said, number 5 says, so to answer number 5, obviously, of course, the branch of government that's responsible for the policy issue is the legislative branch, right? And going back to what we mentioned, Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the right to pass rule of naturalization. But you could also talk about how that the executive branch is also involved in this, because obviously, of course, that is the branch that is enforcing that immigration law. And you can also talk about how the federal courts also get involved in this, because they also have to determine the constitutionality of these policies, that's through the concept of judicial review, where all laws passed by Congress, all executive actions by the executive branch, and the presidency and the executive branch, they are subjected to judicial review. Basically, the judges are basically, they can review this kind of like referees, so to speak, right, in a game. But yeah, so keep that in mind that you can talk about, which one has, which one would you say is the most responsible? So of course we would definitely say that the legislative branch is most responsible, but also the other two branches have a lot of involvement in immigration, in border security. Also keep in mind that immigration and border security are not quite the same thing. They're very similar, and they're usually are part of the same process. But immigration is of course the process of people coming over and the eligibility of who can come over, whereas border security is securing the border and ensuring that immigration occurs legally. So they're not quite the same, but they're both very related. Okay. Number 4, evaluate how different people in our society may be affected by the specific issue. So this is where you're going to talk about public opinion here, right? So this is more so like chapter 6, also the interest group chapter 11, political parties chapter 9. So what is the public's, as well as certain groups like interest groups and political parties' opinion on the matter? So this is where I would definitely recommend for you all to look at maybe some polling information. There's good places, like you can find up like Gallup, Pew Research polls. You could also look at the Texas Politics Project, which does polling more so for Texas. So if you want to make if you want to look at this border security issue, yes, at the federal level, but also if you want to look at this more also with more of an eye towards Texas, because that's where we live, you could also look up the Texas Politics Project. They've also got some good polling information. So, but yes, I would definitely recommend to look up some polls. Usually some of these CNN news articles will already have polls embedded in them, so you can just kind of go from there. Take a look at the different interest groups that could be involved in this political issue, such as these nonprofit advocacy groups, like maybe the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU would be a good place to look at in terms of how they view this issue. And then political parties, right? You could take a look at a comparison between Republicans and Democrats. How do they view this issue? And you'll see that Republicans and Democrats definitely have very strong differing viewpoints on the border security issue, right? Also keep in mind that as you're seeing, like, the SLOs, number 5, and then this is, of course, the social responsibility and things like that, and the communication skills and the critical thinking skills. So that's what this means. CTC stands for critical thinking, and then SR stands for social responsibility. So those are the student learning outcomes and the core objectives that we're going to be covering here. So in this, not just in our class, but well, not just in here, but also throughout our class as well. Okay, number 6. Discuss your constitutional solution to the problem and develop an ethical strategy that can be used to help implement your policy solution. So this is where you're going to come up with how would you solve this problem? How would you solve the border security issue? What would you do? Some ideas would be, would you hire more border patrol agents? Would you continue building that wall? Would you maybe try to design a different type of security system? Maybe not necessarily have a wall, but maybe fund more surveillance. I mean, there already is a lot of surveillance along the Rio Grande, but maybe you might want to fund more of that, right? Maybe have like more, more checkpoints or something like that. It's up to you in terms of how you want to solve this problem. But again, also keep in mind that you also do need to develop an ethical strategy for this. Maybe you also might want to maybe even go more beyond just enforcement and maybe look at some of the core issues for why people are coming over to the United States. So maybe your constitutional solution might not necessarily be just at that micro level, but you might want to look at a more macro level solution, right? So maybe provide funding for some of these these countries, things like that. Maybe you might want to invest more in these countries and try to see if you can develop jobs for these people. So maybe they might not feel like they have to go to the United States or things like that. There's a lot of different ways that you can try to solve this problem here. But again, make sure that it's an ethical strategy, right? You don't want to create a strategy that that violates human rights or things like that. You want to make sure that it is constitutional, that it is legal, or things like that. So you want to make sure that whatever strategy you come up with, that it is ethical and things like that. So also so maybe you might want to also look up like, some of the UN information in terms of human rights, you might, and things like that. So that could also be something to look up as well. Maybe another idea would be like, what counts as a refugee, right? What is the legal definition for of who a refugee is and seeking asylum and things like that. Analyze how, number 7, analyze how your action you may take regarding this issue may impact the election process and discuss how the congressional leader's stance on the issue might impact how you vote in the next election. So if you are going to be writing to Senator Cruz, this is actually really good because he's actually up for re-election next year. So you could, for number 7, you could basically talk about how that because you are a citizen of Texas and you have, and you're registered to vote and you have the right to vote, you could basically be like, the way you take a stance on this issue, sir, could determine whether I'm going to vote for you or not in this next election. So you might want to talk a little bit about that. And then number 8, conclude the letter with why this is a right and responsibility to address this letter to your representative in Congress. This one's very easy because in the First Amendment of our Constitution, we don't just have freedom of speech, but we also have the right to petition our government, right? We have the right to contact our government, let them know, try to reach out to them, let them know the job that they are let them know how we feel about the job that they're doing, and try to redress grievances, right? So if we've got issues with our government, we can definitely try to work those issues out, so to speak, right, and bring those up to their attention. So again, this is 1 through 8 right here. Okay, so this is 1 through 8. Let me stop the share really quickly because I'm going to go to the rubric really quickly. Does anyone have any questions so far on what we're covering? Does this make a little bit more sense in terms of what I'm looking for, how to go about picking your topic, and basically trying to come up with a framework for how to go about doing this? So I hope this makes more sense in terms of how this is going to be. Let's see. So Olga says yes. Okay, good. I'm glad that this definitely does make more sense here. So, okay, Kathy also says yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, so so let me go ahead and go to the rubric really quickly here. The rubric you're going to see is very similar to what we've been talking about here. So let me go ahead and share the screen here. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So as you can see here, the rubric is how you're going to be graded here, right? So again, you're going to need to hit on these, the core objectives, right? You're going to need to hit, as well as the student learning outcomes. So you got to hit on the core objectives and the student learning outcomes, right? So the core objectives, again, critical thinking skills, you're going to develop the ability to, as you can see here, this is how you're able to do well, right? So is the issue is stated clearly and described comprehensively, delivering all relevant information. So again, if you're very specific with what you're explaining, you should be able to get a 4 on here. For written communication skills, content organization are sophisticated, delivery choices effectively communicated. So again, this is more so on your writing skills and how you present your argument, right? Social responsibility articulates insight into own and others' culture and makes connections between one's own worldview and civic responsibility, right? So this is, and again, the border security is a great example for social responsibility because it allows for you to look at different sides to this issue and try to come up with ethical solutions that respect everyone involved, right? The cultures and of the people involved, and basically try to find solutions in a way that are respectful for everyone, right? And then of course, personal responsibility articulates a complex understanding of others' core beliefs or origins and the roles in their ethical decision making. So basically, you'll be able to discuss why this issue is important to you, how you view this issue, how you feel about this issue, and that's basically what personal responsibility is talking about. It's talking about how you're able to look at your own core beliefs and how those core beliefs can also influence your political viewpoints on these issues, right? And that's why, as I said right now, everyone, I hope that you all are able to pick a topic that you find interesting, right? That's why I'm not going to assign a topic, because I want it to be something that you find interesting, something that you want to learn about more, write about, and basically want to see if something can be done. If it's something that you feel needs to be, if it's something that needs to be, that there needs to be more attention on, this is your opportunity to kind of simulate how you would do that, right? Okay, so that's those are the core objectives here. Now let's get to the student learning outcomes, right? So again, this should sound familiar to you all because this is, if we go down over here, these are the student learning outcomes with this activity. And this is also listed in the syllabus, right? So I would also recommend for you all to have this handy with you all, because you're going to have to hit on all of these different ones. So you're going to have to hit on all 8 of these, but you're also going to have to make sure that you go through all these here within the 8, right? So make sure that you answer not just these 8, but also these 8 down here, because if we go back to the rubric, you'll see that it's the same thing, right? SLO number 1 is explain the origin and development of the constitutional democracy in the United States. SLO 2, demonstrate knowledge of the federal system, right? So again, and these are, a lot of these are going to be very similar, right? So if we go back to number 1, explain the origin and development of the U.S. constitutional democracy, that goes beyond 3 performance criteria, right? So it's basically asking, let's see, someone said something in the chat here. Will you give us feedback on the reference? I don't know if my topic is good for this. Yes, I'll definitely try to do that. If you need like more specialized feedback, I can definitely I can we can go back and forth on the emails or things like that. But yes, I can definitely provide that to you, Olga, and anyone else that is needing that. Because yeah, I in terms of like, if your topic is a good one, I mean, I would say that any topic, if it's well thought out, is a good topic. I've never encountered a topic that wasn't good or wasn't interesting. As long as you are able to put in the effort and the research into a topic, there's, I don't see how any topic wouldn't be worthy of being able to, wouldn't be worthy to write about. You know what I mean? Because again, and I can be honest with you all that, a lot of the topics that I've seen over the years, usually border security is one of the top ones. Abortion is another top one that gets talked about. A couple of years ago, of course, we that was more so on the focus of COVID, and we've also seen, LGBTQ rights has been another one. So there's been a lot of really interesting topics over the years. Because again, I've been using this assignment for about 5 years already, and I've read a bunch of these, and there's always been a lot of good, interesting topics that have been brought forth. And I have had situations where students have sent these letters off. Just if you do that, just please don't say that I made you all do that, because I don't want to get a phone call from like Senator Cruz's office, like, why are you having your students like sending me these things? It's for academic purposes. Okay, just keep that in mind. I'm not making you all do anything. That's not part of the grade. Just know that it's for academic purposes, right? But if you're free to do so if you want to as a private citizen. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, so but yes, very good question. So again, and like I said, 1, 2, and 3, they a lot of these are so like demonstrate knowledge of the federal system, as well as describe separation of powers and checks and balances, demonstrate knowledge of the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. So you can see how a lot of this is all interrelated, right? Because we do have, separation of powers and checks and balances. So talk about that in terms of what those are. Of course, separation of powers is where you have the different duties and responsibilities that are separated, right? Where the legislative branch has their responsibilities, the executive branch has their responsibilities, and the judicial branch has their responsibilities. And then the checks and balances ensures that there's not one branch that is more powerful than the other. So talk a little bit about that and how that relates to your topic. The federal system, of course, like we said, you could talk about the Constitution, as well as how those different talk about how Department of Homeland Security, how it fits into the federal system. And then of course the knowledge of the 3 branches in terms of what they do and how they're involved in this in this topic, right? So like we just mentioned a little while ago, right? Talk about how that the legislative branch, the immigration law comes from them. The executive branch enforces that immigration law through the Department of Homeland Security agencies, and how the judicial branch interprets the actions by the executive and the laws passed by the legislative branch, and ensure they're constitutional. Evaluate the role of public opinion, interest groups, and political parties. Like we mentioned before, take a look at them. Take a look at how the public views this issue. How do the interest groups view this issue? How do the political parties view this issue? And then analyze the election process, like we said. Talk about how not just you personally, but also how this issue could impact the 2024 presidential election. The immigration and border security issues are going to be big in this upcoming presidential election, because unfortunately we've seen that there has been a lot of this instability here along the southern border, especially here in Texas. So that's definitely something that's going to get a lot of attention. There was this week, there was, just yesterday, there was discussion about impeaching the current Secretary of Homeland Security, Mayorkas. So there's been talk about that. So that just goes to show you that people have felt that he's done such a poor job, for better or for worse, right? I'm not going to comment on whether I agree or disagree with that, but I'm just saying that the fact that people in Congress felt so strongly to try to impeach him shows that, hey, he might not be doing that good of a job, at least in the perception of the people in Congress, right? And it might not necessarily just be for political reasons. There are documented hearings where there have been some concerns that are brought up about how Secretary Mayorkas has been how he's been overseeing the Department of Homeland Security, right? So just to kind of give that as a thought here. Let's see, there's another chat here. Thank you, I appreciate this meeting. That's fine, Olga. That's fine. We're pretty much almost. You pretty much saw everything that you kind of needed to. I was just going to go over the discussion rubric, but that's fine. You can definitely, thank you so much, and I'll definitely upload this, and that way you all can definitely see this later on. I'll add it to the class here, but yes, thank you so much for stopping by here. And then lastly, of course, describe the rights and responsibilities of citizens and analyze, so like we talked about in terms of that First Amendment right that you have to contact the government and analyze issues and policies in U.S. politics here. Last thing that I want to talk about really quickly, of course, is the how you write the letter here. So, just follow through this in terms of the letter organization. That there are some databases where you can see sample letters. So again, because you're going to style it like a letter, you start out by putting the date, put the address of your selected U.S. senator or representative. It can either be their Washington D.C. address, or you could also put out their Texas address. I know the senators have multiple addresses. I know Senator Cruz has one in Houston. He lives in Houston, but he's also got some in other parts of the state as well here. So you can pick one of those addresses and then put it on there. Start the letter with the proper salutation. Example: dear Senator, last name, or representative, last name. Make sure to clearly state the reason for your concern for the issue of the letter. You want to try to get that reason out as quickly as possible, because again, if you were doing this for real, like let's say you actually sent this letter, and let's say Senator Cornyn is reading through these, he needs to know what it is that you're getting. He needs to know what this letter is about. You need to get to the point as quickly as possible so that he doesn't just trash your letter, right, and move on to the next one, right? So you kind of need to make sure that you're able to get your point across as soon as possible, right? Make sure that you fulfill the criteria list at the beginning of this handout, like we just went over. Make sure to point out your relationship with the legislator. For example, if you are their constituent, at the end, letter, place your name and signature. You don't necessarily have to put like your actual address. You can put like your city, or you can make a fake address. That's fine. So the format here, of course, 12-point Times New Roman, single space, minimum 1,000 words. Don't worry about the maximum. That's fine. If you go over, that's not a problem. But just make sure that you meet the minimum, right? And at the bottom of your letter, you should include your name and city. Okay, and then I guess just kind of goes more into detail on this. So. Okay, so with that being said, let's see. So Olga had to leave. So Kathy, so what do you think about this? Does this make sense in terms of the? Does this make more sense for you, or not really? Or is there anything else that you still had questions about on this, or anything else that I can help you with on this? Let me see here. Let me go and stop the share, or let me stop the recording button really quickly here. So okay.